I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak here again today. I'm always humbled by the request to hey, can you fill in? So it's great to do that. We've got, a new pastor coming here in a couple of weeks, and that's exciting. I hope you guys are, just as open to him as you are me. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes, different things, different styles coming in and things like that, but this congregation has always been very good about that, and I appreciate that, and I'll encourage you to continue with that. With the new pastor coming in and taking the pulpit. As Shay said, he asked me to speak today, and he kind of gave me a series, a new year, a new you. And last week, Jim Moon talked to us, and he started off with, he talked about New Year's resolutions, and he kind of gave us the top 5 or something like that, the resolutions that are made, and some of you make them, some of you don't. There's nothing wrong with making a resolution. It's a new year, so a lot of people think, well, top of the year, fresh start. Let me start with a clean slate, and this year I'm going to do such and such. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is we often don't keep those resolutions, which is kind of strange if you think about it, because we're actually promising ourselves or encouraging ourselves to do something good. Most of us will say, I want to lose weight, or I want to get healthy, or I want to get out of debt. And we fail to keep those good promises. It's kind of strange. It's not like we set out to do bad things. It's not like we say in 2020 I'm going to increase my sodium, or in 2020 I'm going to eat more sugar. Those would probably be easy to keep. But the ones we do promise ourselves, often we fail to do that. Now, I don't think we fail to keep the resolutions because we don't know how to. Most of us know how to lose weight. We know how. None of us know how to get healthy. Most of us know how to do those things. So I don't think it's a question of, how do I keep this resolution? I think the question is our drive. Can we resolve to do this? Are we dedicated to do this? Back in the 90s, I remember I was reading a World War History II book, and I loved history, and World War II fascinates me. And I was reading this book, and I was reading about the USS Arizona, which sunk in Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And this book indicated that to this day, the oil still oozes up to the surface. And I was taken by that. I couldn't believe that. And I resolved right there that, one day I want to go to Pearl Harbor. I want to go out and I want to see the oil come up to the surface. And I just got to do that. I got to do that. Now, this was the late 90s, and I was on a very, very limited budget at that time. And so what I started doing is every paycheck, I took $3. That's all I could afford. $3 out of my paycheck, and I put it in my Pearl Harbor fund. And I just did it year after year, week after week, month after month, year after year, because I want to get to Pearl Harbor. I want to see that oil coming up. Well, in 2018, nearly 20 years after I started this $3 a week fund, my wife says, you have enough money there. We could go to Pearl Harbor if you wanted to. And so we did. In December of 2018, we went to Pearl Harbor, took the boat out there. Of course, they were closed, and that's another story. I should have checked, but I got there at least. Okay, I got that close. But sometimes we make a decision, I'm going to do such and such. And I'm sure everyone here at one point or another has said, I am going to accomplish this goal. There's something. Maybe it's a new education. Maybe you are going back to school, or you're putting a child through school, or maybe it's a new job. Maybe it's that trophy wife you're going to nab. Something. You are going to do this no matter what. You're not going to look to the left or right. You're going to get it done. And your blood, sweat, and tears is what brought you there. In fact, think about that for a moment. What in your life have you resolved to do that it took you a lot of blood, sweat, and tears? It took you a lot to accomplish. Back to school or something. And you really dug in and you achieved that goal. And take a minute and ask the person beside you what they're thinking of. And tell them. Share. Go ahead. Share that thing that you did with somebody beside you, somebody near you, in front of or behind you. Go ahead. Do it. All right, I know some of you are thinking, I came to church and I got to do stuff. I just wanted to sit here. But it's helpful. It's helpful to do stuff sometimes. All right, so hopefully you've thought of something. All right, now I want you to not forget that, because that's kind of the theme of where we're going. There's got to be something in your life, sometime in your life where you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Whatever it takes, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to accomplish this goal. Maybe I'm going to play a new instrument. I'm going to get it done. Something like that, okay? Keep that in mind here, because that's what I want to talk about, that drive that you had to accomplish that goal. It's very important. In fact, we're going to take a look at some scripture here this morning, and I think there's a really good lesson in the scripture that we have that's going to talk about your drive, because really, here's what I'm hoping that some of you resolve to do in 2020. I'm hoping that at least one of you said, you know what, this is the year that I really want to get close to God. This is the year that I really want to develop my relationship with the Lord. I want to walk with Jesus more closely than I have ever walked before. I want to know what it's like to have the fruit of the Spirit's growing within me. I want to know what it's like to operate in the gifts of the Spirit. I want to know that. I really want to get close to God this year. This is the year, okay? I hope at least one of you has at least thought of that. The concern that I would have if that's me is, can I do it? Can I follow through? Can I really get there? Because that's a good goal, isn't it? I mean, it is. To say, this is the year I want to get close to God. And I want to encourage you to think about that. Maybe this is the year that you push your relationship with Jesus Christ a lot closer than it's ever been before. Okay? So keep that in the back of your mind as we take a look at the scripture. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15 today. Matthew 15, it's a really unique story. And I'm going to tell you that this message is going to end with a really, really dangerous prayer. Okay, that's where we're heading. And I'm going to challenge you with this dangerous prayer. All right, let's go to Matthew chapter 15. It should be up on the first slide here. Matthew 15, verses 21 through 28. There it is. Let me read this. This is New King James Version. Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is severely demon-possessed." But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she cries out after us." But he answered and said, "I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Next slide. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, "Lord, help me." But he answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." And she said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered and said to her, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire." And her daughter was healed from that very hour. Now, I got to admit to you, this is a strange story. This is kind of different. And it kind of paints a picture of Jesus that doesn't always fit into our kind of Sunday school image of who Jesus is. Really, it doesn't. If you didn't catch that, you will here. It doesn't fit into that, what Pastor Chase used to call that hippie Jesus, kind of love and peace and joy to everybody. This is a little different. But it's very, very important to take a look at what's going on here. Now, Jesus went to the area of Tyre and Sidon, two cities. They're coastal cities north of Israel, north of Palestine, and they're actually beyond the boundaries of Israel, and that's kind of important. He left. Matter of fact, in Mark's Gospel, Mark shares the same story that Matthew does here. And in Mark's Gospel, we read that Jesus went there because to get away from the crowds. He was there because there was a lot of pressure, a lot of people. He kind of needed to escape for a while. And so he actually left the country, is what he did. It'd be like going from here to Toronto. You actually have to pass through customs, show your passport. You're leaving the boundaries of your country. And that's what Jesus did. He left Israel to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Now, Mark's Gospel also tells us that this occasion, what we just read, took place in a person's house. We don't know whose house it was. We don't know how he got there or why he got there, but it's in someone's house, probably a supporter of Jesus, maybe a Jewish family that were believers. But in any event, Jesus ends up in a house, and that's where this conversation takes place. Now, there's a woman in this story. She's our hero, our heroine, our female hero, and she is kind of unique. We don't know a lot about her, but we know a couple of things, and those things that we know are very important. One of the things that we know about this woman is that she's a Canaanite, okay? She's a Canaanite. She's from the land of Canaan. That's one thing that we know about her, and that's kind of important because A long time ago, before Jesus and this occasion, Joshua led the children of Israel into Israel, and he was required and asked to push all of the Canaanites out, but some didn't leave, and there were some Canaanites who still settled in this region. Now, in the Jewish mind, a Canaanite is really not a good person. And they were worshipers of idols often. They were worshipers of stone and wooden idols, and that was something they commonly did. And with that came a lot of paganism. And in the Jewish mind, a Canaanite, a Gentile person, was really like a dog. And that's how in fact, what they did is they used the symbolism. There were clean and unclean animals. Clean were sheep and cattle and things like that. And unclean were dogs, to name one. Cats were another unclean animal. And so they often referred to Gentiles, Canaanites, as dogs because they were unclean. So we had to know one thing about this woman. She was a Canaanite. And another thing we know about this woman, which was equally important but shouldn't come as a surprise to you, is that she was a female. And the reason why that is important to note is because in Jesus' day in first century Palestine, females weren't always held in the same esteem as men. In fact, sometimes females were seen as the property of the husband. In the court of law, for example, a woman's testimony didn't have the weight that a man. And if a woman testified, this is what she saw, yeah, but she's a woman. What does she know? I mean, that's seriously how it was viewed. So this person, this woman, she's a Canaanite, one strike, she's a female. It's kind of another strike, okay? Now she comes to Jesus because she has a problem. Her problem is her daughter is not just demon-possessed, but it said severely demon-possessed. And I don't know the difference between severely demon-possessed and just regular demon-possessed. But this is a serious problem, okay? So she comes to Jesus. My guess is she's heard about him. I think she has. And she knows that he has the ability to do this. Exorcisms were part of his routine ministry. And her daughter has got a problem, a very serious problem. So she comes to Jesus looking for relief. She comes to this house. And she comes into this house, and look at what she says to him. The next slide. She comes to him and she says, Jesus, have mercy on me. Okay, she asks for mercy. And then she calls him, Lord, Son of David. Now, that might slip past you and I as being important. But I think Jesus' eyes, or ears, perked up a little bit when he heard that. The phrase Son of David is what we call a messianic term. It means of the Messiah. And so what she did is she was basically saying, Jesus, you're the Messiah. What's interesting about that is very few in Israel recognized Jesus as the Messiah. And she's not even in Israel. She's a Canaanite. She's a Gentile. She's a Gentile woman outside of the boundaries of Israel. And yet she recognized who he was. She called him Son of David. Now we know he's the supposed son of Joseph. But to say he's the son of David means he comes from the line of David, and there was a promise given to David in 2 Samuel chapter 8 that the Messiah would come from him. Okay? So that's important to note. She recognized who he was at a time when very few people recognized who he was. So she calls him Son of David. Have mercy on me. Now look what Jesus does in the next verse. He answered her not a word. You get that? She comes in the house, calls him Messiah. My daughter really has a problem. And Jesus answered her not a word. The Message, a paraphrase that I'm not particularly fond of, but I looked it up and it said he ignored her. He ignored her. Really? Here's a woman who needs some help, desperately needs some help. She comes to Jesus, who generally gives help, and she recognizes who he is, and he gives her, or answers her, not a word. Talk to the hand, lady. That doesn't sound like Jesus, does it? And this is a hard one to understand. What's he doing? What's he doing? You know, one of the very first important lessons that we can take from this encounter right here is that we should never or don't misinterpret the silence of God. Don't misinterpret the silence of God. Extremely important. Really. In fact, this is This is what's going to separate that newbie Christian, that Christian who's just starting his or her walk with Jesus, and the Christian who's been walking with Jesus for a while. The Christian who's been walking around with Jesus for a while will understand, don't misinterpret the silence of God. Now, I'm sure there are some of you have experienced the silence of God. You know what I'm talking about. You've prayed. You've asked God. You've pleaded with God. You've begged God to do something. You've laid out your requests. You really explained, this is what I really would like, God. This is what I would really like in my life. And what you get is, that's it. Silence. Nothing. That's a hard one to take. It really is. It really is. And the problem is we often misinterpret the silence of God. We tend to think that the silence of God means He don't care. I mean, I prayed to God. I asked God for this. I laid it out on the table. I showed him how good this was. And He didn't do anything. God must not care about me. That's a newbie mistake, by the way. That's a beginner level mistake. I don't want you making that mistake of interpreting God's silence for the fact that He doesn't care about you. Or sometimes we say, he's just too busy. He's got a million things going on. This is a nothing request. He just doesn't care. Another mistake. We can't misinterpret the silence of God for that. Or worse yet, sometimes we think the silence of God means He doesn't like me. He doesn't like me. And rest assured, God is crazy in love with every one of you. That's not even close to the problem. It's not that God doesn't like you. I mean, granted, He may not be approving of everything that's going on in your life. He may not like everything that you're doing and the choices that you're making. Oh, but does He love you? Oh, He loves you. So do not interpret the silence of God, the quietness of His, as that, or any of those. And fortunately, the woman in our story does not. She doesn't misinterpret it. Because she's got a drive, doesn't she? She's here for something. She's not turning away just yet. Unfortunately, probably, that someone in this congregation before the year 2020 is up, you will misinterpret the silence of God. You're going to pray about something. You're going to seek something. He's not going to answer immediately or in the way that you think. And you're going to misinterpret that. And probably you'll walk away. And that'd be sad. So don't let that happen among you. If you see someone else struggling with that, tell them, don't do that. Don't misinterpret the silence of God. One time, a couple of years ago, I was in Bible study at the jail. And one of the inmates came, and a real rough character, and he started to participate in the Bible studies, and really just kind of jumped in and hands and feet him. He was asking questions, sitting at the front of the class and reading his Bible, and after a while I'm thinking, man, this guy's starting to get it. He doesn't come from a background, but he's really starting to make these connections, and I was really excited about him coming to the Bible studies every week. And one day he just disappeared. I didn't know where he went. I knew he was probably still there, and a couple weeks went by, and he still hadn't come back. And so one day I finally asked the inmates. I said, hey, whatever happened to so-and-so? And he used to come all the week. And they said, yeah, it didn't go his way at the hearing. He said he's done with God. He had a hearing before the judge, and it didn't go the way he was hoping it, and so he's done. That's kind of misinterpreting the silence of God. That's what happens. And it's a shame. Because we don't appreciate what's really going on here. So I want to caution you very much. Don't lose sight of this. The silence of God does not mean He doesn't care or that He doesn't love you. All right, so what this woman does is she doesn't misinterpret the silence of God. She apparently goes to the disciples next. So she goes to the disciples and she asks them. Now, I'm thinking one of two things. One, she may know that the disciples can heal and can do exorcisms. Because in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus gave that authority to the disciples. And so they had done these things. They've been involved in these things. So one, she might have known that they could do it. Or two, and I'm kind of leaning towards this, she wants them to ask Jesus for her. And she comes to Matthew. Matthew, come on. Ask Jesus. Or, come on, Thomas. I need some help. You go ask him. Or Bartholomew, come on. Go ask him. Ask him to do this. And the reason why I say that's probable is because the next verse, the next slide, when they come to Jesus, or the disciples came to Jesus and urged him, saying, send her away, for she cries out after us. And, I think what they're saying is, could you give her what she wants and just get her gone? This woman's annoying me. I mean, she's really starting to bother me. And I think that the indication is, could you just give her what she wants and get her out of here? Okay? So, she's not giving up, is she? And she's got the drive. She's pushing through. But her challenges aren't over. So the disciples say, Jesus, come on, do something. And Jesus does respond finally. He answers them, not her. In the next verse, he says to them, the disciples, well, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, those kind of double negatives mess you up a little, but I was not sent. Basically what he's saying, hey, I'm just here for the Jews. Well, how's that for your Jesus, huh? Wow. The disciples come to Jesus and they're saying, hey, could you just give her what she wants and send her away? And so he answers them. He's still not talking to her. He's not talking to this woman. He's talking to them. They come and, hey, could you send her away? I'm not here for her. I'm here for the Jews. Wow. Man, if you're like me, you're thinking, Jesus, where are you here? Because that doesn't sound like you. What's going on? Why are you giving this woman a hard time? Jesus, why are you giving me a hard time? I'm just coming for you and asking this and asking for that. I'm just trying to, get closer to you, Jesus, and I'm not feeling it. Why are you giving me a hard time? That's what happens sometimes, as you'll see. So he tells her, he tells them, the disciples, not her. He's not talking to her. I'm only here for the Jews. Wow. So I'm thinking at this point, she's thinking, oh, he talked. Oh, he finally talked. He's not talking to me yet, but he's talking. He's talking to them. He's addressing this, and she just kind of moves in a little bit tighter. She pushes it just a little bit more. And she says to him, next verse. She says, she came and she worshiped him, saying, Lord, help me. She worshiped him. Now, I don't know what that looked like exactly, but I'm guessing she drops her. He's talking now. At least he's talking. At least he's engaged. I got his attention. And she falls down, probably on her knees, I'm guessing, and she just worships him. I don't know what it looks like, but just, Jesus, you are sent from God, and I love you, and you're a great God, and I know you can, something like that. She's worshiping him. Let's pause for another lesson. There's never a wrong time to worship. There's never a wrong time to worship. And this woman knows this, apparently. Because if any time, this sounds and feels like the wrong time. I mean, Jesus is ignoring her. He's giving her the stiff arm. He's going out of his way to make her life miserable, it seems like. He's not giving her what she wants. And what's her response? She worships him. She worships him. See, this is another point where some of us, we turn and we walk out and we leave. I've asked him how many times. I've asked Jesus for this. I laid out my request. God knows my heart. God knows what's going on in my life, and he's not answering. I'm not going to worship. I'm not worshiping him. See, that's another newbie mistake. That's another beginner error that I don't want you making. The seasoned Christian is going to know, no, I'm not misinterpreting what's going on here. I'm just going to worship him for a while. Man, there's a lot to be said about this woman's faith and her abilities. So she worships him. And I want you to remind, matter of fact, let's put it this way. This is probably the best time to start your worship. When it's not going your way. When the prayers are not being answered. When the silence of God is becoming deafening to you. That's a good time to set it all aside and just worship his presence. Amen? No, you didn't get it. Okay, that's all right. Okay. So she worships him and she asked, help me, please. And Jesus answered. Next slide. Look what he says to her next. But he answered her and said, it's not good to take the little children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Okay? She's on her knees. She's worshiping him. She's in front of Jesus, praising him and thanking him, and she's worshiping him. And listen to what he says. I can't take the food meant for the children and give it to the dogs. That wouldn't be right of me. Now, really sounds like Jesus, doesn't it? This is the guy you want to snuggle up to, right? This is the guy you want to worship. This is the guy you want to follow, huh? Are you as confused as I am? I mean, this is kind of weird stuff. I mean, did you hear what he said to her? I can't take the food, meaning for the children, meaning for Israel. Because he just said, I'm only here for Israel. I'm only here for the Jews. I can't take what the food meant for them, give it to the dogs. That wouldn't be right of me. What's he just calling her? A dog. My goodness. What's up with his treatment of this woman? I mean, she's done everything good and right. She's doing all that she can do. And yet it just seems like Jesus keeps putting her off. He just pushes her aside. You know, every obstacle, I mean, it just continues to come up. And she's just going around it. And he's making it harder as she goes. He's insulting the woman now. He's insulting her, it seems like. But look at her response. Next slide. Next verse. Look at the next verse. Just wait. There it is. Yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall for the master's table. You know, he said, I can't take the food meant for kids and give it to the dogs. And her response is, you know, but even the dogs come around and whatever falls off the master's table, I can still eat that, right? And I can get the leftovers. I can get the pieces. The kids can still eat and I can get a little bit of mine too, right? This woman's got it, doesn't she? It seems like. And matter of fact, this is where Jesus says, you know, great is your faith. And he actually grants her request. Now, I don't think Jesus grants her the request because, you know, he's got his arm twisted and, you know, her foot on his neck or something. No, he grants it because he sees this woman's faith. You know, my guess is this. The moment she walked in that door, the Holy Spirit spoke to him and he knew right away, this woman's got it. Oh, this woman has got great faith. She probably just shadows over the rest of my disciples. In fact, her faith is so strong. This woman is so perceptive. She knows what's going on. I'm just going to use a little moment here to teach everybody what's really happening. And you know, he does that. And he does it with confidence because this woman is just going to go around every obstacle. Jesus throws one up, she's around that. The next one, she's under that one. The next obstacle, she's over top of that. Nothing's going to stop her. She's going to get to Jesus no matter what. I think her attitude at this point is, I'm either going to get what I want from Jesus or I'm going to get a PFA against me. You know, I mean, he's either going to throw me out of this house or I'm getting what I want because I'm not turning around. And I believe that Jesus knew that the moment she walked in the door. This woman has got it. This woman has a remarkable faith. And so these obstacles that were raised, they were like distractions. Almost as if he's trying to distract her from one thing or another. Trying to distract her with this problem and that problem. But she wouldn't be distracted, would she? This woman would not be distracted. She just kept her eye on the goal. She kept pushing through because she had an incredible drive for what she wanted to accomplish. But what's really remarkable, if you really begin to think about this, and this is sort of the next lesson of this, is these distractions that came her way. These distractions are sometimes placed there by God. Because if you think about it, that's what happened every time. When Jesus was silent to her, that was God acting. You know, with that stiff arm, that get away from me, you know, those insults, all those things, they were done by Jesus. It wasn't the devil doing these. And sometimes the distractions that you get in your life, I believe, are placed there. Sometimes are placed there by God himself. And maybe the reason why they're there is because he wants to know how serious you are. How serious are you really about this? You're asking me for this? Okay, I want to know, how serious do you want this? Is this big to you? Is this important? Are you willing? Are you really willing to pray about this? Are you really willing to seek me about this? Are you willing to go without food and fast before me? Or is this just something flippant? And so maybe a little distraction comes our way. And he finds out that's exactly what the case is. We give up. Okay, God doesn't care. And we move on. We just go somewhere else. Because we just proved we're not really into this. We don't really care. And sometimes those distractions in our lives, you know, they're the things that just pull us away. Think earlier, I challenged you to maybe take this year and say, this is the year that I really want to get close to God. I really want to get close to God. I want to know Him like I've never known Him before. I want to follow Him like I've never followed Him before. I want to get close to Him and I want to be His disciple like never before. I want to love like Jesus loves. I want to think like He thinks. I want to be like Him. Okay, let's say that's what you've resolved. That's what your goal for this year is. I guarantee you, you're going to get some distractions. There are some things that are going to come up in your life. They're going to try to pull you away from that goal. Remember what this lesson is from this. Sometimes those distractions are placed there by God Himself. He'll allow this one to arise in your lives. And we'll get distracted by it because He wants to know, how serious are you? How serious are you about this? Are you really, really serious about doing this? Or is this something you don't care about? You know, if one of my children called me today and said, I'm glad they're not listening. Dad, I need money. Dad, my bills aren't being paid or whatever. I just need some money, Dad. Here's what I need, and I really need it. I mean, I'd do what I could. I'd try to help them out the best that I could. But what I'm not going to do is call my kids up and say, hey, you want any money today? No, I'm not going to do that. But if they come and ask me and say, here's my need, here's what I really want, I'm going to give it to them. And Jesus said, if you then being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will He give you good gifts to those who ask Him? I mean, if we're messed up and yet we treat our children this well, how much more will God give to us? But I think sometimes He's waiting for us to ask. He really wants us to ask. James says, you have not because you ask not. And sometimes we don't ask in seriousness. We just flippantly ask and we move on. And we just proved to Him, I don't really want this. My drive is not there. Okay, so now you're saying, well, Dana, I get what you're saying. I understand that what you're talking about is that drive, to be a better Christian, to really walk with Him this year like I've never walked with Him before. But how do I do that? I'm glad you asked. Because I said earlier, we're going to end this with a challenge of a very, very dangerous prayer. And it's dangerous because if you pray this, and you really mean it, I believe God will answer it. And then you've got some decisions to make. You've got some choices to make. So I'll tell you right now, before we go into this prayer, before we kind of figure out what we're going to say, if you're not serious about it, don't pray it. Don't pray it. You don't have to. You're free not to. But if you're serious, I want to challenge you to consider this prayer. And this prayer is as simple as this. Dear God, show me the distractions that keep me from knowing You. All right? Show me the distractions that keep me from knowing You. Because there are distractions in our lives. There are things that are going on in our life that will distract us from that. And sometimes those distractions are placed there by God. Sometimes they're not. I don't know. But there are distractions that are going on in our lives, and they will keep us from knowing Him. God already knows what they are. He already knows what they are. Sometimes, to be honest, we don't. We don't see all the things in our lives that are pulling us away. We don't see all the distractions that we have. And so sometimes we just don't see them, and we have to ask God, will You show me what those distractions are? Will You show me what's going on in my life that I can't see, that keeps me from really serving You and keeps me from really loving You? I need to know, God. I want to know what those distractions are so that the rest of the prayer, and give me the grace to remove them. Because those need to be dealt with. Now maybe it will be that God will remove those distractions. Maybe say, God, I need You to take them away. But He may say, I want You to take them away. I mean, I got to know how serious you are about these things. So here, I'll show you what it is. I'll show you what's going on in your life that I really would like you to deal with, and then I need you to deal with that. Now, if you're serious about change this year, if you seriously want to live for Jesus like you've never lived before for Him, I will challenge you to say this prayer or something very similar to it. Dear God, show me the distractions in my life that keep me from knowing you, because I really want to know you. So I need to know what's going on in my heart, in my life, that's pulling me back. That's the dangerous part, because I believe He'll answer that. As a matter of fact, I'd be willing to wager right now He's telling some of you. Right now, He's whispering in your heart and He's saying, you know about this. We've talked about this before. This is going on, and this is what's really keeping you from knowing me. You already know this. And He's already starting to tell you what it is. Now you've got to make a choice. Am I serious about knowing God? Do I want Him more than anything else? Am I willing to really put aside whatever it is that distracts me this year so that I can get to know Him and really know Him? Where you're driven with a passion and a desire where anything more than anything else, I just want to know God. If that's what drives you, then I think you can say the rest of the prayer. Give me the grace then to remove those from my life. Now I believe God will answer that prayer. And as we close here this morning, and I'm going to pray. And as we pray, if there's something you want prayer about, and there's a prayer team in the back, and they're poised, ready to pray for you. They really are. You don't have to come down here. If you want to slip out and go to the back and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, and I just need some prayer because I don't know if I have the grace to deal with this in my life. Right there they are. They're ready. They're trained. They love you. They want to pray. So please do that. But as I pray here, I want to challenge those who are serious about their faith and taking it to a whole new level this year. I want you to pray this prayer with me, okay? Let's bow our hearts for a moment.